Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first of the Gear Gaming Tournament Series Maelstrom pre-shows. There'll be one of these every Monday, going over who are Gear Gaming, what's going on with the tournament, and so on and so forth. So let's jump right in. I am GFE Cavalier Guest. My co-host, Grizz, will not be with me this evening. He will be co-casting the tournament with me, however, tomorrow, Thursday, and in the coming weeks. So you guys can look forward to that. For those of you who don't know, of course, Grizz is the caster for Heroes Hype these last few weeks. He's a big caster in the community, always really friendly guy. He has his own stream, Grandmaster player. I think he ended up at Grandmaster at the end of the season. And of course, everyone, I assume, knows who I am, GFE Cavalier Guest. Still not used to saying the GFE part, but we'll get to that. But that's not what everyone's here for. People want to know who Gear Gaming. Who is Gear Gaming? It's actually a really cool story, and I'm happy to be able to bring it to you. I sat down today, actually. We were supposed to do this before, but we sat down, sitting down today with Glenn Whitman, who is the founder of the Gear Gaming store. And he told me a little bit about where he's been, how he got to where he is. This 3 years ago, he was a computer technician who wasn't happy with where he was in life, and he had a situation where there were a lot of stores, gaming stores around him that kept popping up, but then they would be sort of cliquey, right? They wouldn't build communities, they would only let their own friends in, and then they would go under because there wasn't enough business to keep them afloat with that attitude. And he had a background in LARPing, which for those of you who don't know is live action role playing, and he was head of a chapter for the national LARP board, and for him it was all about building a community and telling stories and bringing people in and being able to tell the stories. And he had a vision at this point of a game store that did that right instead. So he started a game store called Gear Gaming. It's in Bayville, Arkansas. This tournament is in fact hosted by a brick and mortar store. I know we didn't even know they still existed, but something happened when they started the store. They started having Magic the Gathering tournaments, and of course, it was just their local scene. It's not like the teams were very, very good. Or the players, I should say, not teams, were very, very good. They were sort of amateurish, but they sort of grew together. And as the community got better, as the top players in the store got better, everyone below them got better as well. And we saw this building. And Glenn saw that. Glenn, was part of this. And now we're at a point where there was a 2,000 person regional, and one person from the store took 10th place. They consistently have at least 2 people in the top 64 for their region, and that was just amazing. It was unheard of at the time for this particular region. And he saw that, and he's like, well, can we do this with other things? Can we move beyond the brick and mortar store and take this to the internet, take this to esports? And that's what this channel is intended to be. The Gear Gaming Esports channel is intended to be the continuation of what they did in their own hometown with Magic the Gathering. And it's going to be for Hearthstone. It's going to be for Heroes of the Storm. It's going to be for other games. I know they're working on trying to incorporate a Smash tournament as well. So we have that. That's who Gear Gaming is. They're not so much interested in making a quick buck. They're interested in building a community and having that community be able to bring others up. Right? So they and tell stories and just give people a place to pursue their dream. Just like Glenn Whitman, the founder of Gear Gaming, pursued his dream by opening a store in the first place, transitioning out of a job that he, wasn't terribly happy with and wasn't fulfilling him. And personally, as a streamer, I could not ask for a better sponsor for an event like this, because what is a streamer but someone who's trying to pursue their own dreams, right? That is Gear Gaming. That is why we are here. So tournament format rundown. We're going to move into that next. And this is, I think, just going to be such a hype thing for so many people. It's going to be I believe this might be actually the first real pro amateur tournament in North America. And the way it's going to work is we're going to have Tuesday and Thursday of this coming week. Anyone can sign up. If you're a team of 5 people, sign up. I encourage you to do it. I know there's multiple teams playing in the HCC Open every week. If you have a chair league team, whatever, sign up. Maybe you'll make it to the top 4. And the way it's going to work is they are going to be best of ones because we're expecting a really, really big turnout. And we need to get through everyone on Tuesday and Thursday. So all the amateur teams need to finish their sets, and we're going to get to the top 4. There are 3 maps to pick from. It's Infernal Shrines, Brax's Holdout, and Cursed Hollow. So each team will get to ban 1, and then there will be the one remaining game will be play. The one remaining map will be played. That's the idea. The top 4 teams, the top 4 amateur teams from our Tuesday, Thursday amateur bracket will move on to the next week and get to play against a professional team in the quarterfinals. We have 4 invited Heroes Global Championship teams from NA that are on board, ready to go. They are Gale Force Esports. They go first because they're near and dear to my heart. Superstars, Naventic, and No Tomorrow. So if you're a team who's in the HCC Open right now, if you're aspiring to get into the professional scene, even if you don't think you can win, even straight up you just don't think you can win against these teams, getting the chance to play them will show you things about your own play and be that learning experience that Gear Gaming had with Magic the Gathering that provided for all their players who came to the store. And they're trying to do the exact same thing here. They're trying to build up the scene and give people a glimpse of the gap. Where do they need to be? And for the record, if you are an HCC Open team right now and you get into the top 8 and have to play tomorrow night, you'll be seeded directly into Thursday's bracket. So if that's a concern for you, don't even worry about it. You'll be seeded directly into Thursday's bracket. Just get in touch with myself or Cam on Discord. You'll be absolutely fine. And we will make that happen for you. For the quarterfinals, we will add 2 additional maps, and they will be best of 3s. They will be Sky Temple and Tomb of the Spider Queen, so you'll get a chance to see a macro map and a bigger map in addition to the map pool we've already selected, so that should be absolutely awesome. You can kind of think of this as a preview to the Crucible. Of course, the Crucible will be the upcoming bottom of the HCC teams versus the top amateur teams from the Open that's coming up to see if maybe one of the teams gets swapped out. And depending on the teams that sign up, you're going to see that. You're going to see maybe even the same teams that make it to the Crucible are going to have a chance here to play against the top professional teams right now. And then the third week will be the semifinals, the finals, and the third place match. We don't know who's going to make it there. It could be our professional teams. It could just be, the 4 professional teams all sweep their sets and move on to the next week. But we could have an amateur team. We could have an amateur team that goes the distance, maybe even that takes the tournament. There's some teams, particularly some top dorm teams, that are chomping at the bit to prove themselves. And the only reason they didn't participate for HCC was because they needed to finish dorms first. I'm sure everyone knows who I'm thinking about. But that is going to be an amazing experience. I'd like to take a quick moment for Twitch chat. Anyone who has any specific questions about the tournament format so far, about Gear Gaming, I'll do my best to answer them. And we'll just wait for the delay to catch up. Man, I'm excited though. You guys have no idea how excited I am at the idea of a professional amateur tournament like this, because it's gonna show people a lot of things. Do you have some good teams signed up? We do have some good teams signed up. I'm going to be totally frank with you guys. We had a little bit of an issue with our social media guy. And we do have some strong teams signed up, despite the fact that we didn't get the information out there as quickly as like. We do, in fact, have our own team signed up. So in addition to this whole wanting to build a community, wanting to sponsor educational formats and tournaments for Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone and other games, if possible, Gear Gaming does sponsor a Heroes of the Storm team themselves. We've seen them play in HCC Open consistently. They've been performing quite well, and they are signed up. They actually have been drafting and playing significantly better over the last few weeks. They've really started to put the time in. We have a couple other teams signed up. I'll link you guys in chat the page for the signups, and you can check to see who's already signed up. I should have had that ready to go. We should actually have a bracket command, but there's a rule. I don't know if you guys are aware of this rule, but in the rule is that the very first week of streaming anything, there's nothing goes right. So we have Even in Death signed up. Even in Death is currently the number 2 team in the HCC Open by points. We have our Tannis or their Tannis signed up, which I believe is number 4. We have Gear Gaming, 3D, Thunder Awakens. These are all teams that have performed really well in the amateur scene right now. And we're going to have more and more and more teams signed up. Apparently I'm not a mod, so it deleted the link. That's pretty funny. This is why you need to mod your broadcasters in chat. But I'm sure someone will grab that up. How's your bow tie? My bow tie's doing good. My bow tie is doing very good. All right. Well, in the interest of brevity, if there are no other questions, I will get that bracket link to you guys in a second. But we actually have a pre-recorded interview from David Wu of Panda Global, who has been in esports for a while and has built up multiple scenes in exactly the same way that HOTS needs to be built up right now, in terms of having some structure that gives a transition point from the amateur to the competitive. And we are very much going to talk about that right now. We'll be back. I'll be back in a little bit. It is a pre-recorded interview. He had to get some travel, so he wasn't going to be available live today, unfortunately. But this is literally one of the best interviews about building up a competitive scene I have ever seen anywhere. I encourage you guys to enjoy it, watching it as much as I did giving it.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone to our interview that's going to cap off our pregame show for Maelstrom Gear Gaming. I have with me David Mashashu Wu from Panda Global.
Mashumaru. You can call me
Mashumaru. There we go. Your real name is so much easier, for the record.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And we're actually talking about something that has a huge bearing on the Maelstrom tournament, which is the way amateur teams transition into becoming professional teams. What structures exist in games to make that happen? And of course, working with Panda Global and working in multiple games in his career, David has a really, really good handle on that, and we're lucky to have him with us today. How you doing, David?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the warm introduction. And we should just jump into it, right?
We should. So, in the games you've worked on in general, and focusing on HOTS in particular, if you can talk about that, what has been the hallmark of the teams that have made the transition from the amateur scene to the professional scene?
I would say dedication. When I see people make it their number one priority to play the game and to focus on the game, and when they envelop their life around the game, they tend to be successful, because you need to spend time for game knowledge, for mechanics. There's a lot of different things that you have time to spend. You need to spend time on, and you only have 24 hours a day. There was someone who said that it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something, to really become an expert. And it's just, you have to do it. It's every aspect. So when I see qualities of people who are, very, number one, passionate, but also dedicated and willing to put in the time, they tend to be very successful. So for Heroes of the Storm, for example, you've had all these, these pros, and they've been playing, since the beginning, since beta, and they've had this advantage where they've played other games before, or they've come from other scenes that have similar mechanics, similar strategies. So they have some basis already that they can build upon. And then you have some newer players who, maybe this Heroes is their first game, and they struggle in the beginning, but over time are able to compete, because it's just like playing catch up. You eventually close that gap when you work harder than someone else. And those are in Heroes, in fighting games, in pretty much every scene that I've been a part of, that is the hallmark of someone who's going to make it. And one of the big problems I see in I guess the MOBA genre, specifically with I guess when you have one big LAN or one big tournament, the way Heroes was set up last year before HGC, was that teams didn't stick together and they weren't able to grow and really reach their potential together. There's a LAN every 3 months or every 2 months. You qualify. If you didn't make it, you dispersed and tried again. If you did make it and you didn't make top 2 or 3, teams were breaking up. They were kicking people. They weren't sticking together, and they weren't, working through these problems. They just thought that replacing talent with talent would be the solution, would be the quick solution. But in the long term, I think it really did hurt the development of a lot of teams and a lot of players.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about the fact that Heroes of the Storm is a relatively young game, especially
Hmm.
compared to the games that have been around for forever.
Definitely.
And I think that there's a pretty clear way in other games that you get to the top. If you're what is it, Challenger in League of
Hmm.
Legends, I believe it's called. Pro teams are going to start looking at you. They're going to start scouting you.
Right.
And sometimes there are skills that are different between, say, a ladder and the competitive scene.
Hmm.
But I think particularly in Heroes of the Storm, the skills that you need to play competitively in an organized environment versus on ladder are completely different to a huge degree. And you have a lot of experience with this because you started
Yeah.
Panda Pro League, and
Yep.
which ended up being plagued with issues because he had these competitive players playing with Grandmaster players, and the Grandmaster players just felt like they could not keep up. Can you talk about your experience in that? What happened with Panda Pro League that made players feel that way?
So the Panda Pro League, and we came out with it with the Panda Pro Ladder as well. Just kind of was a attempt to kind of merge the amateur scene with the professional scene, and it sorted out the people who already had experience playing competitive, because the games are very different. In solo queue, you can get like right now because of the relative size of the player base, you can get away with cheese with one character cheese, like that Gazzle bot, like just Gazzle solo lane solo push actually does work at a high percentage of the time. But when you enter organized play, it gets punished severely. And in a game like Heroes, where objectives and team-based play have such a high emphasis in terms of power, it's really not successful or viable at a high level, at the competitive level, or in organized play. So the PPL pretty much tried to teach some of these Grandmaster players what it's like to be in a competitive environment by mixing them with professional players and competitive players who've been on these teams and who had the experience to work on different gameplay aspects. And I think the viewers especially were very intrigued because everyone watched it. Like, I think we had at one point in time Twitch viewership for Heroes was up. We had like 95% of the viewership at one point. And all of it was viewers saying, wow, I never knew that this is how people shot called. This is how people played competitive, because there was never really a look behind the scenes, because no one casts their scrims because they don't want the strategies to get out. So I think it was very enlightening for both the audience and a lot of players. For the I guess the 4 weeks or 5 weeks it was up, in terms of what competitive play actually was about and the skills you needed to get to it. And there were a lot of diamonds in the rough, and I believe a few of them have entered HGC. All of them are still playing competitively. They're either in Heroes of the Dorm or they're on these higher level amateur teams that are trying to get into HGC. So it was definitely a very good ground for, I guess, those who wanted to try to learn, because some people, once again, it's about dedication, and really sticking to it, and really admitting to yourself that, there's always going to be there's someone better than me right now, and I want to learn from them so I can beat them, I can be better. And we just didn't see that from the entirety of the Grandmaster players, because they, in my opinion, at least from talking to some slides, so it might be skewed, they thought they were Grandmaster level, so they didn't know about the competitive side of the game, so they just assumed that they were the best. And frankly, maybe for what that got them into Grandmaster, they were really, really good. But the other parts of the game they needed to round out to become a professional player, and even the parts of their game they needed to round out to become amateur players, and to be successful in the amateur circuit. They really needed to work on a lot of different aspects that they just weren't aware of. So I key it up to ignorance. And the PPL was really just, for me, it was more of an exercise in eye-opening to show the amateur scene and the people who wanted to be part of the amateur scene what it's like to be on a competitive team, and give them at least some direction as to what to improve on and what to look to improve on. Because not every amateur team has a manager, has a coach, and not every coach or manager for those amateur teams have worked with professional teams. So there's just a large gap in terms of uh, the skills you need to learn and need to acquire to play at the world's highest levels. Um,
And do you think events like this, where you have pros versus amateurs, is going to help in the same way? Because we're later on in this tournament, we're going to
mhm.
have 4 professional teams versus the top 4 amateur teams that make it through our bracket. Do you think seeing that matchup is going to give people an idea of the difference? Especially because it's going to be a casted event, they're going to see the strategic difference, the movement, the mechanics.
Mhm.
Do you think that's going to help? Do you think it's going to give people something to aspire to? Is that sort of why you're associated with this tournament in the first place? Is it
Yeah,
another educational, eye-opening experience for everyone?
I think it's going to be very important. I'm very glad that the professional teams are giving up their time and willing to play in a tournament like this, because when I was working with teams before, uh, the largest amount of growth we had was after we got absolutely clobbered by a very like one of the top teams. And we learned from our mistakes. We saw how hard they were able to punish the smallest things, and it really taught us what um, what we needed to work on. What are the things we need to watch out for, and that's why everyone wants. It's essentially like that's why in scrims you want better scrim partners because you want to learn, you want to get better, you want to test new strategies, but you also need to work on the meta as well, the current meta game, and the meta heroes because uh, hero pools are very important in MOBAs. They're very important. They're important in all games, actually. Being able to play a wide variety gives you more options and opens up more strategies for you and your team. But you also have to be prepared to practice them a lot to make sure they're at that crisp level, at that top level, because you can't just go in and say, oh, I played Meriden once. I think I can do it. He's pretty relatively simple. There's so many nuances in the way you position, in knowing your own damage, before you haymaker, that Jaina away, and the Jaina lives with 100 health, and your team gets destroyed. So there's a lot of nuances that need to be sorted out, and a lot of these pro teams have had, they scrim probably 4 to 8 hours a day, and so they've had like for over the course of the last 2 years, so they've had the time to put in to learn these nuances. So I would say it's a very good thing, and even though I feel like I hope we get surprised, and I hope some of these amateur teams show up and just like absolutely dominate, but the chances of that are really slim, and I really hope they take the opportunity to learn and really get some good games in, because it's not every day that you get to play against one of these teams. In my own experience, because I come from the fighting game community, we relish the idea of playing the number one seed in the world. Even though I'm about to get absolutely destroyed, I might get double perfect. I might even not even touch him or hit him once. But the fact that I get to play him, and I get to learn from my mistakes, and I get to try out what I want to do, and that's just, it's invaluable. The first time I played against, one of the top players, I instantly leveled up and got better. I went back to training mode. I worked on it. I worked on my strategy. I worked on my thought process, my decision making, and it immediately made me a better player. And that is applicable to everything, not just video games, but also life.
Yeah, any competitive setting. When I played chess competitively as a child, I plateaued at like 1600. I
Right.
just could not get better, and eventually I started playing people who were 2000, 2100 rated chess players, and I suddenly got like much better, leaps and bounds better. And I think it's interesting that you can't, or it's very difficult to get better unless you're competing with someone who's better than you are. Which brings us back to what you were saying earlier about the NA scene and them constantly switching out talent. It not only, like, the slowing down the progression of yourself also slowed down the progression of the entire scene, because we ended up in the situation where no teams were putting this time in as a team to develop this skill set. And in fact, the moment we saw it happen, the moment we saw one team that was just like, we're going to be together, we're going to play as a team, Tempo Storm, they were on top, and everyone was just playing catch up to Tempo Storm for a while. And we're starting to see the same thing with Team 8 now in HCC. Team 8's like, we're going to stick together, play as a team. We just like playing together. We're just going to do things together as a team. We're going to play our thing and work on improving the things that we're personally trying to do.
No, exactly.
And
you look at the European teams; they've been together for a long time. They had a bit of a shuffle this past year, but like for the longest time, a lot of these players have been playing together for a very, very long time. Same in Asia until very recently. A lot of the teams were, glued to the hip, so to speak. So like it's not necessarily about individual talent as much as overall talent on the squad and the dedication they have to each other. Because communication is so important in Heroes specifically.
And that's something we don't really have any educational content for yet. We don't have guides for shot calling. We don't have guides for how do you have good comms. Like that's something that people have had to learn piecemeal as they went along. I remember Justine, the tank for Team 8, had an interview where he said, I literally had never heard anyone else shot call until I joined Glass Team. And he's been playing competitively for 2 years on different teams. He was on TNC.
Yeah, and he was the shot caller for his teams.
Yeah, and he'd never heard anyone else do it.
They were a top amateur team. They were really good. They were really good. They qualified for LAN, like top 8 as an amateur team, like just with no support, and like no org support, nothing. They just showed up and were doing great. They were talented, and they had no idea. But like now look at it, like they stuck together. They learned. Adjusting obviously I'm assuming lets Glarong shot call.
Yeah.
So he's learned. I'm sure he's learned a lot, and look at the success they've had.
So that's encouraging. It's encouraging for the NA scene that we have that dynamic. It's encouraging that we have events like this that are showing our amateurs more and more and more of what the competitive scene is capable of. And we're going to keep working on it. This is the objective of the tournament in some ways, is to get more information out there to the amateur scene, give them more practice environments, more things to compete for so they feel that competitive edge, that pressure that can bring it out. And you think 2-3 years from now, NA is going to be a really competitive scene if we keep doing events like this?
I think the more the community supports events like this, the better off we are, because it's all about, because like right now, let's just say HCC doesn't come back next year. What happens to Heroes in North America? And that's a very scary question, right? It's a very scary proposition in terms of what the scene's going to turn out, how the team's going to turn out to be. But if there's a healthy and vibrant amateur scene where people who enjoy playing this game are just competing and getting better and moving up and ranking up, and and there's community support for people who want to view this stuff, people who want to participate, then it really won't matter if there's an HCC or not, because there's going to be people playing. There's always going to be a scene for passion. There's always going to be a space for it. And I've seen that over and over again. People say, "Oh, this is a dead game. This is a dead game," and then all of a sudden, there's a catalyst of some sort. Everyone's like, "Hold up, that's still my favorite game of all time. I'm playing it." And you just host, amateur tournaments or whatever, and people show up and they want to participate. They want to. Because at the end of the day, you want to do what you love to do. Like, that's just how it is. Like, we all, one thing that I've noticed in my life is that if you love something, you're going to eventually get around to doing it. Like, it's not like, oh, I really like, hamburgers. I'm not going to eat hamburgers for the rest of my life. That doesn't exist. Like, you're going to find a way to eat hamburgers. Weird example, but you know what I mean? Like,
that's a great example. Everyone loves hamburgers.
Yeah, if you truly want to do something, all you have to do is go do it. And if you truly love it, you'll enjoy every step of the way, whether it's for money, not for money, whether it's for glory, not for glory, whether it's like, win or lose. There's always an opportunity to view it as something positive. And I'm really glad for, this tournament, Maelstrom, because frankly, there's been a lack of just stuff in Heroes, and I feel like there needs to be more. And there definitely needs to be more.
Well, I think I can speak for myself and everyone who's here watching it. They must be Heroes fans if they're here. That I agree with you. I'm looking forward personally to trying to make more content for the Heroes of the Storm scene. thank you for joining us today. You've been actually really insightful. That was some of the most interesting conversations I've had about Heroes of the Storm ever. And I've been streaming and playing Heroes of the Storm for quite a while now. Thank you
Correct.
so much for joining us. Any parting words you want to have for Twitch chat?
Um, thanks for tuning in, definitely. Please support Maelstrom. Please support, Cavalier Guests. Follow, subscribe, and like, everything. Tune in. Just come by. It's gonna be a good time. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised about the skill level of the amateur scene because a lot of these teams are really good. Uh, when you've been playing as long as they've been playing and trying to become competitive as long as they've been trying to become competitive, like they have some crazy stuff and they have some talent. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they do. Like I really want to be surprised. I really want to see them challenge some of these top teams. Obviously there's still a gap, but I really think they can challenge. And as always, uh, like thank you to everyone participating in this tournament. All the teams that are willing to take time out of their day to come by, and everyone for participating, including especially the amateurs, because this is for you guys. Like this is one of those times and one of those opportunities that you just don't usually see in a lot of other scenes. And I'm really glad to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you, David. That is David Wu from Panda Global, everyone, and we'll go back to the main screen.
All right, thank you guys. Scenes, and I'm really.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. God, that was a good interview. I remember I was giving that interview, and I was just like amazed. We don't have it today, but next week we will in fact have an interview with Zuna from Team Naventic, who is going to give his perspective on everything. We were going to have a giveaway today, but I don't think we have that set up and ready to go in terms of like raffling it off. I don't think it's there. We will have a giveaway next week. So we're going to have two $20 Battle.net gift cards to give away next week for next week's pre-show, where we'll be able to go over which teams made it and how they're going to be matched up against the professional teams. And one thing I didn't mention, I'd like to save it for last, there is a prize pool for this amateur tournament. It's not just like, oh, show up, have fun. No. There's money on the line here, ladies and gentlemen. There's money here on the line. We actually have a $1,500 prize pool for the top 3 teams. It'll be $1,000 to first place, $300 to second, $200 to third. So if you're an amateur team who can actually show up and beat a professional team in 2 sets maybe, then you're pretty much guaranteed to get some amount of money from this tournament. It's amazing. Unless there's any other questions from Twitch chat about the tournament, or maybe even suggestions about who you'd like to see get the perspective on it, we could have them as a guest on the show. That will be it for tonight. The Maelstrom will be starting tomorrow, Tuesday, at 6 p.m. PST, right back here. So make sure you follow the channel so you have that information. You get that email when we go live. And in the meanwhile, we will see all of you in the Nexus. Have a good night, everyone.